amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. You will do amazing things with the choice each new day brings. And with every breath you take, bless the progress that you make. The reasons you live is found in every gift you give. Love your life, love your dreams. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. All the places you will go and the people you will know. Don't worry when, where, or how. You don't have to know right now. You're on the right track. No need to look ahead or back. Just enjoy what the day brings, 'cause you will do amazing things. You don't have to work it out. Just stay in the here and now. Let your mind rest a little while. Sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So close your eyes and take a breath and smile. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Sing with me. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Sing it loud, sing it proud. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things.
Yeah, who shouted that out? I like that. Yes, you will do amazing things. You have just done amazing things. Thank you so much. Amazing things. So the title of my talk today is Everyday Calling. How many of you have a job? How many of you have had more than one job? How many of you consider yourself as having a profession? How many of you are retired? Wow. How many of you have never worked outside the home? How many of you consider yourself as having a calling? Good, then I can just sit down. You're a unique audience. You know, many people think about having a job or multiple jobs, having a career perhaps, or a profession. A lot of people focus on being able to retire and not having to work, so to speak, anymore. Or there are some people that have always worked in the home or for whatever reason have never worked outside of the home. But one of the things that sometimes we don't really take time to consider is that we all are called. And today we want to talk about what it really means to understand that each and every one of you have a calling on your life, that you truly are called. And that whatever work or not work that you find yourself doing or not doing, you know, sometimes with our jobs, we can categorize it. We go to work and we punch the clock and we're so glad when we have time off. We don't have to go to work. We put it in categories. But when you realize that you have a calling, there's no time in your life when you're not on call. You know, that you're always on call to be available for the calling. And so what does that really look like? Some people, when they think about what it means to have a calling, they think, well, you know, that is for priests or monks or missionaries or like Mother Teresa or St. Francis or someone like that. Other people, when they think of a calling, they think of maybe a child prodigy, you know, that little kid that everybody can see has these just unique gifts that they were born to do. Or even like a Steve Jobs. Remember the founder of Apple Computers, how even as a young kid, he was in his parents' garage putting things together. It's like all his life he had this vision. We sometimes tend to see those as calling. Or even those kids that how many of you, by the time you were in first or second grade, you knew what you would do all of your life? Yeah, there actually are a few people that God bless you, that know that. So we show up in life in different ways. But sometimes we tend to think about work as one thing and only certain people have calling. There's a good story that illustrates this point about a priest and a taxi cab driver who were in a tragic accident together. And as the story goes, they're walking to the white light together and they see the pearly gates and they realize that they've crossed over. They're now in heaven and they're so excited to be greeted at the gate by St. Peter. And St. Peter says, we're so glad to have you both here. Welcome. And I have the opportunity to show you where your home will be. So they both, the priest and the taxi cab driver, start following St. Peter. And he comes up to this just gorgeous mansion that has open doors and windows. And there's a stream of water running nearby. And there's everything that you could ever want inside of this place. And the priest is getting really happy. And then he takes the hand of the taxi cab driver and says, welcome, this is your place. And so he continues on with the priest, and the priest is thinking, wow, you know, I can't imagine what my place is going to look like. And so he's sorely disappointed when he arrives at this little place that is nothing exciting at all about that. And as St. Peter says, here's your place. And he said, well, surely, St. Peter, you have us mistaken. I was a priest, and I spent my life, I had a calling. And this gentleman was a taxi cab driver, not a very good one, I might add, because we're both here. And St. Peter says, well, let me look in my records. And he does, and he says, oh, okay, I see. You were indeed a priest, and people slept through your sermons. He was a taxi cab driver, and everyone prayed when he drove. Don't ever underestimate your calling. that every person has a calling. Every person that ever has been born, every person that ever will be born, has a calling, and we're always on call. And so things begin to happen when we realize this, when we begin to look at whatever that it is we do, and we really have a call. And the calling, quite simply and yet very profoundly, it's the big why, the W-H-Y. It's the big why we are all here. That the scripture says that we're called according to our gifts, or we're called in accordance with our gifts. Well, there's one gift that we all share in common, and that is the gift of life. And so first and foremost, our calling is our life. It's about taking this gift of life and making the best out of it every day that we have. And then, in accordance with your unique temperament, your perspective, your talents, the things that you are here to discover in this life, those things will be avenues through which you express your calling. But we can't reduce our calling to any one job or any one task, because your calling flows through every dimension and every aspect of your life. If you consider it this way, your calling emerges from the deepest aspect of who you are. Your calling is your fulfillment of what God, the creative, has created you to be. And so you could say that your calling is the fulfillment of your life, your whole life. Marianne Williamson wrote, "You have a calling because you are alive. You have a calling because you are a child of God. You have a calling because you're on this earth for a divine purpose, to rise to the level of your highest creative possibility, expressing all that you are created to be." That's the calling that each and every one of us share. Even Oprah Winfrey once said, "We are all called. If you're here breathing, you have a contribution to make to our humanity." Do you realize that you are called? Understanding that we have a calling, and that every day, every life, as A Course in Miracles says, every encounter is a holy encounter. Every day is a calling us to share our gifts, our talents, whatever it is that we have in the world. Something begins to shift, that life becomes about a life of being of service. And so the first thing when we think about having a calling is to realize that when you realize your life is a calling, it causes you to show up differently. You know, if someone calls you and you're asked to do something, don't you show up because you know that you're showing up for a purpose? It's to show up differently. I have a brother that is 14 years younger than I am. And when my sister and I, we're only 18 months apart. I'm the oldest. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anyone. I'm the oldest child. My sister and I are just 18 months apart, and we were very, very close growing up, and like all siblings, we squabbled. But one thing, we loved holidays, and we loved Christmas, of course, and birthdays, but we also loved Thanksgiving. Because I grew up in eastern North Carolina and out in a rural area that my grandparents had farmed a lot of land, and so as their 8 children grew up, they gave every child a piece of that land, and to this day, it's almost like Strickland Avenue. I have an aunt and an uncle and an aunt. They all lived, and my grandparents were all lived in this area. And so for us, every Thanksgiving, we would get our rakes and our gloves, and we walk down to our grandmother's house, and we would work in the yard together with all these cousins, and a lot of the adults, the women were in the house cooking and preparing food. The smells just keep wafting out. So Thanksgiving for my sister and I was a grand occasion. But my brother came along 14 years later. And by the time he was really old enough, some of those older folks had died. We didn't have the exact same experience. And so for some reason, he really didn't care a whole lot for Thanksgiving. So my sister and I never could understand. Well, when my brother got older, got married, he moved out of the state. One year we're on the phone for Thanksgiving, and he sends us some pictures. He's all dressed up in a suit and tie. His son is wearing a suit and a bow tie, and I'm like, what in the world? He is all dressed up for Thanksgiving, finally. And we asked him about that, and he said, it's different. Thanksgiving is different here. Thanksgiving is different here. He said, it's an exalted occasion. And he said, they get out their best silver, and they're this and they're that. And I listened to everything he said, and then I said, yes. Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving, wherever you are. If we look at it as an exalted occasion, we show up in a different way. And he said, you're right, and it's fun to really show up for Thanksgiving. What would it be like if every day was an exalted occasion? An occasion to really show up and to realize that just as Thanksgiving is about the meaning that we give it, it's about what we choose to make it. Every day is about how we show up and what we choose to make it. When we think about every day as a calling, in the indigenous tradition, they would never have thought of a person being born without understanding they had a calling. They saw every person as having a calling and unique ways to express that calling. And they also believed that calling revealed itself through three things. That in the indigenous culture, it was believed, and it still is believed, that every person needs three things. And those three things are something to love, something to believe in, and something to do. And that when you put all of those together, when you're doing what you love and you're doing what you believe in and when you're doing what's yours to do, you can't help but be on your calling. Do you have something to love? Do you have something to believe in? And do you know that you have something to do? And sometimes that something to do may be to be present to an individual, to offer that smile, to sit in meditation. It doesn't have to be this grand gesture. It was Mother Teresa who said, we don't do great things, but we do small things with greatness. And that's what makes them great. And so if we look at this, the first thing that we can realize, about a calling, again, is we show up. But then to ask the question, am I doing what I love and loving what I do? Am I doing what I love and loving what I do? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to run out and change your job or change a lot of things. Ideally, what it means is that we can find within us the capacity to connect with a purpose, to connect with something within us that we do love. And that gives us reason and cause, and it helps us to show up in alignment with our purposes, to do something that you love, and whatever you do, to do it with love, and to love what you do. Some of you may remember I've shared a story previously about Sir Christopher Wren. Sir Christopher Wren was recognized as one of the greatest architects from Britain. And back in the 1600s, when the Great Fire swept through London, he was the architect that was credited with restoring and rebuilding over 50 cathedrals. Even some of the greatest, St. Peter's Cathedral, he was the one credited with rebuilding those. And I think he also invented the show, what's it called, Secret Boss? Have you ever seen that show on television where the boss of a company goes in disguise to the job site to see how people are, what's the name of it? Undercover Boss. Undercover Boss. Well, before his time, he did that. He would go out to the job sites of whatever cathedrals they were working on. One particular day, he wrote about going out and he saw 3 workers doing the exact same thing. They were all working on framing doors. And he walked up to the first worker and he said, "Hi, what are you doing? What are you making?" And the guy stood up and said, "Well, I'm making about a shilling a day," meaning I'm making just a few pennies a day. Well, that's interesting. So he saw another person doing the exact same thing, and he said, "What are you doing? What are you making?" And he said, "Oh, I'm making a door, the task at hand." And he saw another worker doing exactly the same thing, and he went over to him and he said, "So what are you doing? What are you making?" And the guy stood up and looked him straight in the eye and said, "Haven't you heard? We are making the greatest cathedral in the world." Now, can you see how enthusiasm in Theos, in God, can you see how the enthusiasm was flowing through that person who was loving what they were doing and doing it with love? You're aligning with purpose, and the universe begins to use you and begins to flow through you. We have the capacity to do that, whether we're knitting a hat, whether we're cooking a meal at home, whether we're vacuuming, whether we're in a meeting with coworkers, whether you're behind your computer screen, whatever it is, to take a breath and to pause and to just say, am I doing this with love? And how do I connect with love to love what I'm doing? if you happen to find that every day of yourself, every day of your life, you're really struggling to love what you do, you may want to consider making some changes. That life is too short not to be able to find a way to love what you're doing. Rumi wrote it beautifully when he said, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. Isn't that beautiful? Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. So do what you love and love what you do. The second thing, so we all need something to love. We all need something to believe in. So then do what you believe in and believe in what you do. That is an ingredient for integrity. And that's a powerful thing to be able to live your life and your work and to show up in your life with integrity. To do what you believe in and believe in what you do. I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, and one day I was on a flight, and you know how in airplanes they have those plane magazines. I like to read articles in those ones, so I picked one up and I was reading it. And there was a story about a farmer in the Pacific Northwest, which happens to be like the apple capital. They grow so many apples, wonderful apples in the Pacific Northwest. This particular man he made his living as an apple farmer. He produced a lot of apples, and he considered himself the best in the area, and he had a great reputation. Well, this particular year, the weather as the apples were forming had been some real challenging weather, and there was an exceptional amount of hail and hailstorms. And so his apples had really taken a beating. And you know what happens to an apple when you hit the skin, it has brown spots, and it doesn't look like that beautiful shiny apple we all want. And so this farmer in the Pacific Northwest had quite a conundrum. He had a whole crop that had varying degrees of hail damage. And his other conundrum was he had pre-sold. His demand every year was so high, he had pre-sold his crop. He already had the money. A lot of the money was spent. And so what's he going to do? And he said he thought about going to some other farmers and perhaps buying their apples, but could he believe in them? And did they grow them with the same care he did? And so he did what some of us finally do when all else fails. Anybody want to guess? He prayed. He prayed. Guide me. Because he had to be in integrity. And so his guidance said, tell the truth and make the best of it you can. And so what he did, he sat down and he wrote a note. And the note said, note the hail marks that have caused minor skin blemishes. Note the hail marks that have caused minor skin blemishes on some of these apples. They are proof of their growth at high mountain altitude where sudden chills from hailstorms help firm the flesh, develop the fruit sugars, and give these apples their incomparable flavor. He made copies of those notes, put it in every single batch of apples, and sent them out. Well, he did not have one single person that wanted to return their apples. Everyone was happy. As a matter of fact, he said that the next year he had specific requests for the hail apples. All because he chose to live in integrity. Isn't that a beautiful thing? To love what we do, to do what we love, to do what we believe in, and to believe in what we do. Richard, would you give me the song? So we all need something to love, we all need something to believe in, and we all need something to do. The best way to summon a sense of your calling, to really summon a sense and a connection with your calling, is to put yourself in service to God and humanity. You see, some people, I heard Michael Beckwith say one time, we need more people in the world who are airy-gritty. And I agree with that. Some people are so airy-fairy that they're not really any earthly help. Some people are also down in the mud. They're not a lot of help either. So it's like we need some airy, gritty people that can really be here to serve God and humanity. And so we do what we love and we love what we do. We do what we believe in and we believe in what we do. And we do what we do in a way that serves God and humanity. You see, if that becomes our continual prayer, then we never stop growing. We never stop evolving. The channel of inspiration never grows dry. We're never too young to serve. We never become too old to serve. If that becomes the prayer, let me do what is mine to do in a way that serves God, the creative, all that is, and humanity. Henry Matisse was recognized as probably one of the most influential artists in the 20th century. Beautiful paintings. But toward the end of his life, he had some devastations, cancer, arthritis. He was just bam, 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 hit with a number of things, it seemed like. These things led him, who had enjoyed his life as an artist, all of a sudden he couldn't use his hands like he had used his hands. Not only that, he was bound to a wheelchair or the bed. He was really sick. And yet he wrote that in those last 15 to 20 years of his life, they were the sweetest, richest, most creative years of his life. This man who had been an artist, when he could no longer create that way, he always remained, I'm in service to the Creator and I'm in service to humanity. So as the story goes, he had seen some children with little scissors cutting out little construction paper. And it inspired him to create what is known as the Matisse paper cutout. These are some of the greatest works of art ever created, because he would never lay down and say, I'm done. I've done my time. And what beauty came through him. And he was able to write. They were the sweetest, most creative, most inspired days and times of my life. I hope today and this week that each and every one of us will make some space to stir up what it says in Timothy, to stir up the gift of God that is within us. What is the gift? It is God within. It is life within. To stir it up in a way that we're inspired to do what we love and to love what we do. In a way that we're continually inspired to do what we believe in and believe in what we do. It's a way of holding your feet to your own fire that turns the self into the gold, the God of your being. And to do what we do because it's ours to do in a way that allows us to serve God and serve humanity. And I believe that when we align to do that wherever you are, those times you find yourself in the stuck places, or at night when you lay down your head, or when that time comes and it's your time to go, I think there's going to be the soul song that you're going to hear that's going to say, amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. You're doing it. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. And then you can imagine what it would look like if a group of people dare come together and have the boldness to believe they were here to serve humanity. You know, when our sense of purpose and our sense of self-importance gets off track, it's sort of like Carlos Castaneda said, if our self-importance is misguided, it requires that we spend the rest of our life offended by somebody. Now let me ask you this. Is there an inordinate amount of tweeting going on about people being offended by somebody? Is there an inordinate amount of people just spilling all stuff because they're offended by somebody? We will spend our whole life being offended by somebody or offended by something. I don't want to come to the end of my life being offended by anything. I want to come to the end of my life being worn out because I spent my life in service of. And so I believe that when we all tune in and say, you know, it's great to get riled up. It's actually good to be offended. But we don't become a servant of the offense. We use the offense to draw out the gifts of spirit to heal those areas. And that's what needs to take place in our life. Yeah. And so can you imagine if a group of people come together and we hold our feet to the fire of our own integrity, our own soul's integrity. We do what we love. We do what we're called to do. And it's like one by one, these lights begin to show up. I can just imagine being on a satellite up here and looking down and saying, beep, 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 beep. What's going on in Mills River? Beep, beep, beep. There's a lot of light energy. And if you tune in, you can hear people saying, amazing, amazing, we will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, we will do amazing things. So I invite you to close your eyes and just turn your awareness more inward. The soul of you knows none other than itself, the one self that reflects itself in every face and form around you. The soul will always call you beyond any competition, any better than, any less than, any holding back. The soul will call you to shine your light. The soul will call you to remember that you're here with a high and holy purpose. And that's not a better than or less than, because everyone is here with that same special high and holy purpose. Every person, if you really talk to them, have a sense of wanting to be special, of feeling special. It is because you are special. How could you not be special if you were created by the God, the all that is, that created all that we see? Surely you are special, but not in a way that would compare yourself to anyone or anything around you, but in a way that recognizes that you have something that is more than sometimes appears ordinary, that it is the spirit of you that makes you special. It is the light and the love that illuminates any darkness that makes you special. It is that which goes into any situation and every situation and is there to love, is there to honor, is there to shine its light in a way that when you leave, you do not feel depleted. You feel like you've done what was yours to do. And even in those times when you do grow physically tired, there's a sense of knowing that you have spent yourself in a way that was worthy of your highest efforts. And so we reclaim back our energy. We reclaim back our focus. We reclaim our capacity to be in service to spirit and humanity in the way that we were created, sharing the gifts that we have. Every day showing up, standing up, speaking up on purpose. So when we go forward in our lives, we will begin to ask, is it loving? Do I believe in it? Am I doing what's mine to do in a way that glorifies and blesses heaven and earth, spirit and humanity? And when I align my attention with these intentions, something that almost appears mystical begins to happen. Now I am used for greater purposes. I become an instrument of divine operation. Because I've let go of thinking that it's about me. I've come to realize that life happens through me. And it is a sheer joy and a privilege to be a host and to bring forth what's mine to do. And so I ask you to visualize where you spend a lot of your time every day. And to just see it filled with light. Visualize your heart in your hands and light just flowing from you, flowing from your eyes, from your feet. That you allow this light to flow through you. And with that recognition, something simultaneously happens, and that is every encounter now becomes a holy encounter. Not only are you in touch with the light that flows through you, you can see the light in all others. And we can hold that light, even if there's an individual that is having difficulty holding it for themselves. We don't do it in a self-righteous way or a judging way. We just know it's the truth. And so it is in this space that we hold our world. We hold those in Florida who are experiencing incredible devastation. We hold in our hearts this question and desire to understand, why would any one person go into a school and kill people? Why would any person ever harm another? We hold that question. We hold that which disturbs us. And we realize that it doesn't have to be that way. Use us, guide us to be agents of healing. Allow us to see this and hold this in a way that is in a healing space. Wherever there is hurt, wherever there is sorrow, allow us to be instruments of healing and light. And quite often that will mean that we need to come apart for a while and tend to our own brokenness, tend to our own questions, tend to our own unsettledness. Continually take ourselves back to that place of light and love and truth, and to draw from that well that never runs dry. And so we bless, and we choose to know that in all things, that good can come through all things, even those things that are not good, goodness can be born through them. We open our hearts and see that light and see that love. We recognize the Spirit of truth coming forth in a way that truly does bring and do and is amazing. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. Leave out the will. You do amazing things. All right, we're going to sing it a few more times as I invite you to stand, but this time we're not going to take out the will. Just you do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you do amazing things. Join the hand of someone. We will. Amazing, amazing.